There we go.
Hey.
Hey, let's just start there. Welcome to the Coin and Key Collective with Eric and Stephanie, where we talk about crypto and real estate. Today we have with us Maxim Broadcast. How you doing today?
Doing good. Good to be
Excellent.
here.
Stephanie?
Doing good.
All right. Guys, let's jump right into it. Maxim, give us a brief, like 1 minute or less background on your background in crypto.
Okay.
If
So
you,
I
if you can
got
hold
in,
it to a minute or less.
we'll see. So I got into crypto in 2015, mainly because I wanted to learn to trade. And at that time, I was basically trading Bitcoin. And in 2016, I ended up selling all my Bitcoin and got back into crypto in very early 2017. Got mainly into Bitcoin and Ethereum, and changed my focus from being more of a trader to focusing on fundamentals, and ended up paying attention and listening to Richard Hart very early on, and getting into Hex right at the very beginning, and recently in 2021. My own real estate and cryptocurrency, like I work for myself in those two areas, and so far it's been a good but wild ride.
Right on. Cool. Well, I remember you and I were in the ICOSA group back in August
Yeah,
last year. Working with Alex, helping him develop that. Not that we're developers, but he's
right.
bouncing ideas off the group, and that's where I first noticed you. And I think you recorded your first video
Yeah,
right after. I think it was after ICOSA launched.
it was a little before.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah,
So I've been following your work since then. And so, how do you see, like, the whole market right now is very, very depressed,
yeah,
and the people are depressed. Our
yeah.
portfolios aren't looking too great.
You're right.
So, how do you hold through times like this?
Yeah, I mean that's something like, how do you play the bear markets and the bull markets
Yeah.
well, is definitely something that I'm trying to gain better explanations on through the process. And like I said, at the beginning, I was a trader. Then I turned basically into a holder, because I was looking at, who in the space has done the best. And the billionaires in the space and the multi-millionaires, for the most part, they got in on good projects when the price was massively down, and all they really had to do was hold. That really appealed to me. I like simplicity. And I was like, that makes sense to me. And let's look at what are the tokens that I think are gonna be around. I don't have to time things as much. Just I can look to the future. Eventually, the price will probably go up if there's actually value here. What are those tokens? And I basically was just a holder, and I was telling myself things like, I don't know where the top is of the market or a particular token. I don't know where the bottom is. I felt like I didn't have enough money in to like retire or something like that. So let's just hold and buy, basically. And I'm now currently kind of in the middle of those areas where looking at the fundamentals is extremely important to me. But watching your portfolio drop 90%, especially when you start seeing larger numbers, is something that I feel there's better ways than just holding through the bear market and never selling anything. And so the last bull run in 2021, I did sell some, and then so I'm kind of like, it's a hard question, I guess, but it is a good question. So like, I do see bear markets as opportunity, and like the risk to reward, the more depressed the market is, crypto is extremely volatile. I would argue that the market over time has done a poor job at understanding what the real value of a particular token is, because it wouldn't go like this if people knew what the value is. So when
True.
there is depression in the market, when emotions are pushing people to sell and get out and give up, that's usually where things are overpriced to the downside, and there is a lot of opportunity in that time. And it's a refining time, because the projects, that's where the community is going to leave. If they're going to leave, that's when people are going to give up. And if you can see in that hard time that there's still a community, people are still building,
Yep.
it can suggest risk reward. And you can actually, it's one of the best times to be paying attention, I'd argue. And even you need to pay attention in the worst of times and the best of times, but in order to take advantage of those good times the best possible, you need to have bought low, right? You can't just sell high without
Right.
buying low. And there's two parts to this equation. And so your question was about holding. And so one simple thing is, like, just holding is not what I do. I don't just hold. And for better or worse, like, that's where I'm at in the process. Like, there's educated probabilities I use to buy and sell. I'm not in this to hold forever. I do want to go ahead. I think you have a question, or you had something.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. So, but capitulating at the bottom is, like, not a good thing. Like, that's the worst time to sell. You sell high, you don't sell low.
Mhm.
You want to have resources available to buy low. And
Right.
and if crypto's all you have, then in order to have those resources, you probably need to have sold earlier on. And so I'm trying to gain better explanations for what does that look like? How do you do that? And but my emphasis is, like, I need to be buying. And I don't know if that's the same as holding, but I need to be putting in.
There you
And
go.
and yeah, I have lots of explanations on how I'm learning to, or I guess what my current explanations are on what that looks like and how you can have some confidence in this process.
Interesting. Well, cool. So I want to talk to you about, like, when we think this may recover. But I want to give you my 2 cents and what I've heard from other people, which is where I get practically all my material. But from what I understand, we are in an election year, which will affect, I think, the broader market, the macro economics of crypto. And so that is gonna have effects. So we have an election year, and then we have Bitcoin halving in April. And so I see things starting to recover, perhaps, between, like, September through, April, somewhere in that time frame. What would you say is your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think those are really worth paying attention to. I think cycles are something that's really interesting to me. I just observe in the world in general, there's a general cycles. There's an up and down process, and the up and down process is something that seems to just be everywhere. But at the
Hmm.
same time, I want to be really careful of inductive arguments. Like, just because something in the past has happened and there's a particular pattern, I'd argue is not a good reason to automatically assume that it's going to happen again. There are reasons for that pattern to exist outside of the pattern. There's a reason the market was depressed at that time and over exuberant
Hmm.
at another time. And so I'm trying to, like, pay attention to what those explanations are. And then you stated one, like, the Bitcoin halving is relatively well correlated with the bull runs. And so then my thing is, if this is a valid explanation for why the market has gone up, I want to understand, why does the Bitcoin halving, what's that? I can recognize the pattern now. I want to understand the reasoning. Why did that lead
Right.
to
There you go.
that outcome? And so the Bitcoin halving is an interesting argument. I mean, when Bitcoin started, the inflation was 100%. So the halvening had a massive effect on the supply versus demand. But the halvening is literally a halvening. So that inflation of Bitcoin paid to miners, every halvening is half as much. And we're already at like 1.7% or something like that Bitcoin inflation. The halvening of that, I'd argue, is less meaningful than ever before. Because the amount of trading volume, the amount of impact that has on supply and demand is roughly, arguably half as much as every time before. And so I put a little bit less weight on that this time than before. For what it's worth, the Bitcoin, I think there is, like I said, especially at the very beginning, when you're starting at 100% inflation and you cut that in half, that is a massive supply and demand impact. Ethereum, though, in the last year or so, has gone from roughly 5% inflation to a little bit deflationary. If the Bitcoin halvening did have an impact on the price, then I'd argue that there's a case to be made that Ethereum, the second largest crypto by market cap and trading volume, roughly, going from 5% to a little bit deflationary is way more than a halvening. And I think that's very bullish also. And so I'm taking that into account. I'm trying to, right? Like that looks like a good thing to me. There's also this correlation with the crypto markets and the purchasing managers index, which is basically it just monitors companies. Most countries have this index, but within the US, are companies basically buying things? Are they expanding or are they contracting? And it's just a metric in my mind that shows at what stage in the economy are we, and it kind of implies, are we risk on or risk averse? And it makes sense to me that crypto is a relatively risky, volatile asset, that people are really going to want to put money into this thing when they're risk on, when they're willing to take risk. And so there's some reason, I think, to pay attention to what is the broader economy doing. Do people feel like they have money and the ability to take some speculative risk? And that's the PMI goes through a wave pattern of sorts.
Define PMI for me.
Yeah, purchasing managers index. So that's the metric that shows basically our companies, for example, in the U.S. expanding or contracting. And it roughly tends to go on a 3-year cycle, which is a little bit interesting to me. But if you look at Bitcoin specifically versus PMI, they're pretty correlated. I would argue very similarly correlated in the bull and bear runs to the Bitcoin halvening. And to me, I put more weight on that than the halvening itself, kind of for the reasons I'm saying. If people are expanding, it's a sign. If the economy is expanding, if companies are taking on risk, it suggests that we're in a risk on part of the phase, and crypto might do well. And you can look at the cycles over time. Generally, we haven't had that many bull and bear markets in crypto, but they're roughly from peak to peak, roughly 4 years. But that's some of the original cycles were shorter. And then there's some arguments that the cycles are extending, specifically with Bitcoin. The altcoins tend to have an even shorter period of they have a longer bear market and a shorter bull market, but they tend to, a few of them massively overperform Bitcoin historically. I think it's just worth recognizing a lot of times altcoins follow Bitcoin. So Bitcoin will increase and then altcoins increase. So how long is this going to be? In my mind, I feel like it's the probabilities are relatively high that we're going to have a bull run before the end of 2026. And that's me trying to be somewhat conservative.
Agreed.
if you can't tell. Like that
Yeah.
that's a longer time frame than some people would say, but that's I want to be really careful putting myself in a position to have something I can't control work in my favor. And so I want to set myself up to be able to survive and not need something to
Right.
happen for a relatively long time frame. And it's possible it takes longer. It's possible something happens. There's a lot of variables that could hurt crypto. Um, but like you said too, taking into account the incentives built into the system for a election year, um, and then taking into account where it looks like the Fed is at with interest rates and the incentives that can come into play from that, and if we're on a risk averse or a risk on time, still seem to line up pretty well with we might have a bull run sooner than 2026.
Sure. Yeah, I really like your conservative. So you and Crypto Coffee have very similar conservative viewpoints, and we need that in the community. Like there's a lot of hopium.
Yeah,
A lot of hopium goes around, and that's great. But you and coffee counterbalance that a bit, and I think that's important.
yeah, I respect Coffee. I think he's pretty smart, and I think
Oh
he's
yeah,
wise.
yep.
Just for what it's worth, uh, you do not want to follow someone. You want to follow their explanations, and you want to make sure their explanations make sense to you. You don't. That's one of the things that I've looked back and felt like I did wrong. This guy has
Mm,
shown himself trustworthy. He's saying this, so then I'm going to
yeah,
do it without understanding myself what the explanation for doing that is. It's a bad thing to follow. But there is different people are like some people are more uh worthy of listening to than other people. And you
yes,
can't listen to everybody, right? So
yeah,
like what's the 80-20 rule? Who are these people that
yeah.
have shown themselves uh worth listening to? I want to incorporate those explanations into my own explanation. And I think Crypto Coffee's done a really good job.
Right. Agreed. Yeah. If there's one thing I've learned that I keep like in the middle of my head is that, this, well, obviously cryptocurrency is all about making gains in dinero, right?
Yeah.
Which is, and the love of that is the root of all evil. And so there, you got to be careful with, who you listen to,
Yeah.
and are they being genuine? Are they being disingenuine? I think there's a lot of, you just have to be careful because I've
Yeah,
heard and
true.
I've experienced myself, you know,
Right.
disingenuineness.
Yes. And
Yeah.
that's one of the beauties of crypto is it gives a new standard to don't trust, verify. And I
Yes.
think there's so many potentially beautiful implications of the transparency and learning process that is capable from seeing what actually is. Uh, it, it, it's one of the reasons I love cryptocurrency is because of it. It has the ability to tell the truth in a way that can
Hmm.
be obfuscated or hidden in other parts of the market.
Okay. Excellent. So I want to welcome Red Squirrel. It's good to have you in, and Caliente. It's been a while since I've seen you. So I think that I didn't post this on Twitter or Telegram or anywhere. So everybody that's in here just is kind of in here organically, which is pretty cool. Um, Now Eric is about to cuss. Stephanie has never heard Eric cuss. Now, and I asked you if you were open to talk about this. XEN,
Yeah.
Zen. Let's talk
Oh,
about
that
it.
is a bad word. I
Yes, I've
love it.
lost I've lost people on Twitter, and I'm sure we're about to lose some subs on YouTube. But I'm in this. I'm a capitalist, and I'm in this to make money. And I see Zen as being so innovative, and I love innovation. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I like innovation. When I saw Zen, and I'm like, wow, you can literally mint this stuff for the price of gas. I'm gonna have a look at this. And so, like for example, I've minted it on the Ethereum network, but now that we have the Pulse network, it's so much cheaper. And so I've been minting Centurions for like less than $5 each. And in today's at to today's Zen price, they're worth over $200. They'll mature next October, not this October, but the following October. And who knows where the market is going to be by then. Yes, we need the liquidity to go up in order for me to exit those if I wanted to and make a profit. But that's pretty exciting. $5 worth $200. So I've been, stacking those up, and there's a lot that we could talk about in the Zen ecosystem. I honestly have never talked to anybody except for one person about Zen. So I'm not a little excited to get your thoughts on Zen.
Great. I don't think I've shared, at least in video format, in the last, since Zen started, a lot of my thoughts, but I see the Jack Levin ecosystem as an unusual opportunity at this point in time. And like many things, you can still get very burned. Like there's ways to play the system that you're going to get hurt, but and there is speculation built into this. This is not a known, but I see things lining up in a way that I see a ton of potential in the Jack Levin ecosystem. And I think we should talk about it.
Sure. I see this as, Zen being potentially a currency we can have on our phone and use for transactions at the store.
Yeah.
I see that much more likely versus a token like Bitcoin or Hex or any other tokens. I think some of those have store value possibilities, where Zen is more like I look at it as more like a currency, like the average user, or even the entry level user in India and China, where Zen is exploding, Europe, they can mint Zen, and then they could potentially in the future perhaps transact with that Zen with their phone.
Yeah, I see. So I'm playing this crypto game, and one of the things that I want to avoid is gambling. And one of the ways that I try to avoid gambling is trying to, kind of like I was saying earlier, trying to create good explanations for what suggests value. And I'm trying to pay attention to like what decisions have I made and what are the results that have turned out well and also poorly. And so far, if I was to try to really simplify some of the correlations that suggest opportunity, it's tokens and projects that have a strong community. So they keep the people that they've attracted, and then they also attract more people. And I think that's valuable for so many reasons. Price needs to have a buyer. Like you need to have people coming into the system to push price up, and a community that is staying and growing suggests that potential is there. But also community is massively valuable in an unknown way, because the community has the ability to talk on Twitter, create YouTube channels, create websites related to the project, explaining and showing specific dynamics. Community has the ability to, all those things I'd argue are value add, create other projects built on or around this project. All those things are unknown potential and value add that you only get with humans. Humans create.
Right. That's correct.
As the community grows, the potential for value add creation grows, and it's an unknown. You don't know what ideas are going to come, but it's correlated with a good outcome. And so I'm looking at the Jack Levin ecosystem, looking at the forever down chart, and the fact that the community is still there, and that's valuable to me. Another thing I look for that I think is correlated with good price appreciation is original ideas. Copycats tend to not do so hot. The tokens that run the hardest are relatively original new ideas. New ideas are worth, I think, mentioning. They do not have to be, not every new idea is good. There's a lot of bad ideas. But one commonality for the projects that run hard is they are original. So you got to look through and critique, is this original idea good or not? But it has to be original in order to really increase in price. And so I see exceptional originality in what Jack Levin has done so far. The Zen itself, the price is odd. The price goes down, but like he basically invented a new way to ICO that is the most SEC proof of any way of
Yes.
ICOing I've ever seen,
Yeah.
because it is relatively true. It's not a lie. So like ICOs are basically like IPOs but for crypto. So you give Ethereum to the project in order for a portion of your tokens. There's the Howey test and certain things, and it really isn't looked on fairly, I think, for good reason, because there is an expectation of, oftentimes with an ICO, from the work of others. Like you can give your money to a developer that's promising to develop a token, and if he doesn't develop the token, it makes sense to me that people are upset, and there could be some legal action associated with that. After the ICO phase, there was this basically sacrifice way of doing it, where on paper or on the website it's saying, you're not giving your money to us because you want our token, you're doing it for this particular cause, freedom of speech or something like that. And it's like, it's better, but it's still kind of a lie, because everyone knows they're not sacrificing. They would not be sacrificing for whatever that cause is. Like 99% of the people are not sacrificing truly for the cause. They are sacrificing because they expect that token to do something. And so it's still kind of sketchy. But with the Zen model, you give your Zen to a contract. When Zen model, in my opinion, done right, you do the work yourself, you run the contract, give your Zen, that Zen is burned. The developers of the project do not get the tokens. And it is a much more pure form of, no, really, you're not giving any value. You're not investing, but you do get the token. And it's like, it's more in the interest of the developers than I think people recognize. One, the developers have a chance of passing the Howey test and not being a security, which is valuable to a lot of developers. The developers also have a way to a hierarchy of sorts of deciding who to give their token to. The people that sacrifice more Zen get more of their token, and it suggests that those people care more about the project. It's a way to disperse funds in a meaningful way. It also implies a price target for their token. If someone gives $1,000 worth of Zen, it's kind of implied that they think that the amount of token they're going to get is worth $1,000, and it suggests a price target to the developer. So it's a very innovative, potentially value add way to do things. And basically it kind of works as long as there's some liquidity and some potential price built into Zen. And it doesn't even matter too much if the price of Zen is a lot lower, as long as there's some value associated with it. This new ICO process should theoretically work. And I think it's very interesting. And this is all aside from like what you're talking about with the potential for Zen itself to be some kind of a currency. And I think there's potential for a more in-depth narrative associated to Zen on that particular use case than is in effect right now. And I'm currently trying to understand that a little bit better and have a good simple explanation for that particular side. But I know for me right now, this ICO model is pretty cool. And I think the fact that Jack Levin is building a layer 1, incorporating Zen into that, those particular projects that the Zen model appeals to them for dispersing their project, it's likely that they'll want to build on X1. And it also is interesting because if that model is good and the type of developers that appeals to, it suggests the type of value that those developers have. And there's it could be a lot of opportunity. It could have some like almost unspoken incentives that are really good for the system. And yeah, that's just one original thing. The Zen, what X1 is trying to do, attaching itself to Bitcoin with the bridge, I think is pretty speculative. But I like the fact that Jack Levin and Zensu are explicit in saying we are not trying to build just another layer 1. Layer 1s are kind of,
right,
in my opinion, already a thing. there's getting to be a large number of them.
Yeah.
Some of the first ones did a lot of price appreciation, but it's the same thing. If you're just going to copy, you're not separating yourself. You don't have a monopoly on something. You want a monopoly on a good idea where you have something that no one else has, and if there's any interest for that thing, you're the only place that they can go to get it. And I like that Jack Levin's doing this. I also I think it's a very good sign, and it's hard, but he is farming the community that he has for ideas. Like I was saying earlier, one of the good potentials of a community is good explanations and good ideas. Jack Levin and Zen Su seem to be consciously aware of the value of that and using that to their advantage. They're not brainstorming themselves coming out with the finished product. They're throwing ideas out, hearing feedback, testing things. And that's one of the things too about, like I was saying, with new ideas, not all of them are good. And you look at companies like Amazon and Google and a lot of successful companies, they will try a bunch of things on a very small scale. The ones that work, then they will scale up. And it's to the detriment of a lot of companies that they just have this brilliant idea, go all in, try to take the whole market right off the bat. And it's a very big gamble. And I see Zen Su and Jack Levin aware of that, farming the community for better ideas. And I think it's a process. It's an emphasis on a good process that is correlated with good outcomes. We don't know yet what the outcome is. X1 is not built yet, but I'm seeing things line up in a way that is suggesting a better outcome. The process looks really good.
Okay. What is your exit strategy? And I'll just go ahead and tell you one of mine. I've been, thinking about this. Stephanie and I both bought the top in 2021 and I wrote it all the way down.
Yeah.
Next time, I need to take profits.
Yeah.
So, and one of the ideas that I've written down is taking 20% off of, doubles.
Yeah.
And everybody should have some kind of exit strategy going into a bull run. So mine's 20% off the doubles, and I have a couple of other ideas, but they're not here in front of me. What is your exit strategy? I mean, are you rotating in real estate or? Yeah.
Right. So I think, like you said, exit strategies are just as important as entry strategies. You need both. And I'd argue. And one thing for me is that I don't know the future, and I know I don't. And so I want to be really careful. Like, I want to have a plan that is also flexible and able to take in as I'm learning more information. I want to continue to take that into account and have an as open of a mind as possible. And I just want to just recognize that something that's given me confidence is that I'm not set on something. I'm continually trying to look at the best I can at what is out there and reevaluate. But there's a lot of things that go into play that can suggest a good exit strategy. One of the foundational things that I find comfort in is taking responsibility as best as I can for the good and bad of any particular trade. So if I'm, for example, going to sell a token, I have to take into account that I know there's a chance that token could go higher.
Yeah. And
is the fear of loss more important to me, or the fear of missing out? Like which one, if either outcome happens and I look back from the future, would I rather have? Yeah, I don't know if I explained that well, but that has given me a lot of comfort. Because in every person is unique. Their situation is unique, but I think at a fundamental level, you control when you sell and when you hold. The important thing to me is that you take responsibility for that, and the opportunity cost of protecting yourself from the price dumping by selling, and the potential opportunity cost of selling and then watching it go higher. You need to know that with where you're at in the process, at least for me, this is how I think of it. I know that I don't know what's going to happen next, but with this is the highest probability, best action I can take based on how I see things now. And if I end up being wrong, I won't regret it because I knew I was open to all the opportunities, and this looks like the best play that I can make. And how can I ask anything more of myself than doing the best with what I see? But so I think there's like, when everyone is convinced that the market is going to go higher, that's a sign that the market's not going to go higher. That's a sign that everyone's already in. And that plays out a lot. And the market is made up of, in my mind, two basic things. There's the fundamentals of the token, the potential use case, the reality of what this token is, but it's also made up of individuals. And so I want to look at both. What is this token? What is the reason that people want to buy this? What are they thinking? Like, buy the rumor, sell the news is a thing because people bake in the future into the current price. It doesn't matter that the fundamentals in the future are going to be something really great. If the price is reflecting that now, I want to recognize that. And so those are some hopefully relatively straightforward and simple things that I try to take into account. And I try to take into account my own ignorance as much as possible and know that I don't know. But what can I do? Ask myself good questions. What can I do that suggests I'm going to have something to show for it, regardless of what happens? So that makes me really conservative, for example, to go all in or out at one time. That's a reason, in my opinion, for dollar cost averaging. I know I don't know where the bottom or the top is, but I can at least average out the likelihood that I've made a relatively good buy or sell by spreading those buys or sells out over time. And I know if I spread them out, I'll never get the ultimate top or buy the ultimate bottom, but at least I'll have it's kind of a diversification, but it's based on the fact that I think I hold more highly than everything else. I know I don't know, so I can at least average my unknown out and still have a better chance because of averaging of a better buy or sell. And yeah.
Okay. Well, I know Stephanie's got to get, and I do want to segue some real estate questions in here, and that's kind of her, both of us, but that's her strength. So Stephanie, you go ahead.
Yeah. So do you have like a brief background in real estate?
Yeah, I started buying rental properties in 2013. I accumulated, I think, 7 properties in a little bit less than 4 years, and they're all rentals. And in the last year, a little over a year, I've actually been selling them. And then in 2020 and 2021, I was the first employee in a real estate startup, and we built 12 homes, I think 16 buildings in our area. So I've also been on the building side of real estate. And yeah, so I've bought some homes, sold some homes, rented homes, built some homes. So
fair enough. Have you seen any like blockchain related real estate innovations, or how do you see the connection?
Right. Honestly, for me, the appeal to real estate and crypto is partially there because they are very different. And I have experience with both of them, and I think they can be complementary for that reason. My confidence level in real estate, what I mean confidence, the lack of speculation that I feel when I'm purchasing and holding real estate, I can take a lot of speculation out and have relative confidence in the risk to reward of what I'm doing. It's a lot more stable in my mind than cryptocurrency. And I think that can be a beautiful balance to for example, one of my goals is to sustain my standard of living well with real estate income. because it's something to me that's, like I said, relatively stable. If I had to guarantee a certain amount of money, real estate's probably right now what I would turn to. The combination of cryptocurrency and real estate, those two things coming together, is a totally different and really fascinating and interesting idea. I think one of the problems of blockchain is that it's code. And whenever you use code and try to attach it to something like the physical world, or even physical people needing to do something to then correlate that with code, you run into problems. They're not necessarily like bad. It's just, I think, really worth recognizing. Like if you're trying to put real estate on the blockchain, we don't have a way to do that right now that is only code. There is some trust in individuals built into the system. If there's a property line dispute or something, like there's a lot of gray areas that really easily come up. And I think it's just really worth recognizing that in the process. But that doesn't mean that a certain part of the process is better done on the blockchain. And I think that there is some potential there. And I think it was Mike Waters I watched your guys's stream with, and I like the way that he was talking about it, because he was basically saying, in my mind, there's some oversimplification that other people trying to, basically, the way I think of it is trying to have a REIT. So like trying to have the ability for a bunch of people to invest in real estate, and they can all own a portion of real estate. That process is more nuanced than some people make it out to be. And if you're going to create something like that, doing the part of the process that relies on the local authorities and local rules, according to the local authorities and local rules, and very practically looking at it, let's play this thing out. What are the implications? One of his examples was, you have 100 owners buying into this one property. If you don't do it right on paper, they're all owners.
Yeah, they
Owners
just knock on your door and show up and be like, I'm sleeping here tonight.
Yes, that means it's their house and they can do that. And it's very easy to see that can be a very big problem. And so he had some creative ways of navigating that system. And it's really encouraging to see people thinking through that process. And it's going to be really cool to see like what that turns into over time. I think there's potential there. And as someone that likes real estate, that would be so cool. At the end, another thing that stood out to me was he was talking about the potential for a 1031 like-kind exchange, which for the people, it basically means you can defer taxes. You can sell a property for something that is, according to legalese or whatever, a like-kind, a similar type of property, and you can delay taxes. You can basically sell something without having at that point in time to pay taxes. You can take the whole profit and put it into something else. And that's a pretty cool thing. I don't know. We'll see like how confident things end up looking when that becomes a reality, that truly can be a like-kind exchange. But that would be a real like 1031 like-kind exchanges. There's a lot of tax advantages in real estate that if someone had the ability to combine crypto and real estate in a way to take advantage of those tax benefits, there's a lot of potential even just for that reason, I think.
Yeah, it'd be a game changer. Okay, some basic questions for you. What's your favorite class of real estate? Like if you were to invest right now, what class would that be in?
So right now the part of real estate that is the most interesting to me is not one that I have a ton of experience in. But I want my goals at this point in time are to own apartment complexes. And so I've owned a handful of rentals, and it's great. And I think it's like there's a lot of potential in doing that. But if you have more capital, I think it can be more efficient to buy something like an apartment complex. Because sometimes, for example, the cap rate, the return on investment that you get includes management. Where if you buy a single family home and rent it out, that is not factored into the price at all. The apartment complexes are bought as investments. And then another thing is you can put your focus in a more specific area. You don't have to have property spread out all over the place. It's in one spot, and theoretically it's a little bit more passive. And those appeal to me as well.
No, for sure. Eric, did you have any questions? You are muted. And you're still muted.
I do have other questions, but we're not going to get to them today.
Yeah, I got to get out of here.
Right. Maxim, would you be open to jumping on at another time, like 6 months down the road or something like that? After
Absolutely.
Things have changed. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I'm up for still talking. I don't want to leave Stephanie out, but it's up to you guys.
You guys can keep going. I just have to get going to an appointment, but.
Okay. Well, you jump out.
Good to talk very quickly, Stephanie.
Pardon me?
Have a good appointment.
Thanks. Take care, guys.
All right. See you, Steph. Yeah. So, yeah, I got a ton of questions. Let me just glance at my list here.
Yeah.
Just give me a second.
I like Red Squirrel saying he's only here for Stephanie. So you can probably leave now, Red Squirrel.
Yeah. He's already gone.
He's already gone.
What advice would you give to people? Okay, so background, Stephanie and I have been working together for a few years. We're both licensed agents, and we have a desire to get into like commercial real estate would be our,
right.
That would be the best play. So we want to take crypto gains, move it into real estate. And so we don't hold any real estate presently.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your advice to people looking to enter real estate, like Stephanie and I, like some mistakes you made, just any advice that you have?
Yeah, well, I would just recognize that I'm probably in a similar position to you. So I've taken real estate profits and put them into crypto. I haven't gone the other way very much. Like when I was initially, so I was doing real estate just started in 2013, and I started crypto in 2015. And the reason I stopped buying houses in early 2017 was because I was like, I see a lot of opportunity in crypto. And so I just want to recognize that reality. And so I'm on the same track as you, I think, because that's where I'm headed as well. And right now, like I'm trying to play crypto in a way that they're taxed the best as possible. So long-term capital gains are something I would ideally want to have in effect, if at all possible, just to have less taxes taken out. I don't know that I have a ton of creative ways of doing that besides some of the just straightforward pulling profits, paying taxes, buying real estate. I'm curious if you have more ideas.
No, I don't. Except for perhaps like a move to a tax zone where you don't get taxed.
Yeah.
Have you considered that at all?
Yeah, I have. That's always really interesting to me. And I've really actually done the opposite. So I moved from an area that did not have income tax to an area that does have income tax. And it's always interesting because it's like, to me, it's in some sense, how much money is community worth? And
like your local community, your friends.
Yeah. And we have a very good community here. And I've looked at moving in other areas, and it's just like and some of it to me is like money, like you said at the beginning of the show, with the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Money is not the end goal. Like some of the values that I have are money helps me get them. Naval Ravikant says money solves your money problems, which is in my mind hard to argue with, but it recognizes that it might not solve every problem. And so for me, I want independence and freedom, the ability to pursue what I think is meaningful. And I think money helps me do that. But one of the things that I think is meaningful is good relationships, not just for me, but also for my family and kids. And in the area that I'm in, I don't know a better place when it comes to that value. And it makes it like, it's interesting to quantify it. Like, shoot, if I lived over here, I can pretty clearly see that I would have saved money. And it's funny to think about like how many thousands of dollars I guess this community is worth to me. But
Right.
that's one of the reasons I haven't moved to Puerto Rico is
You brought it up.
the community. So
that was the place that's on my mind.
yes.
In Puerto Rico, and there are other places, but that one, that Act 60, where you get like a 15-year guarantee, you got to be there for 6 months. You practically like you do need to commit to living there.
Yeah.
Like that's your main place. It wouldn't be wherever we live in the States anymore.
I think it's just one of those things it's worth, I think, trying to set up a hierarchy of values and just trying to make actions that are in alignment with those things. You don't want to sacrifice something that is of more value for something that is of less value. And if community is one of those things, like that's why I want money, is so I can be where there's community. Like, and I want to help the community. Like, it can easily become, oh, money is the goal, in a way that I think is not actually true to what I currently think is the most valuable. And so it stopped me from making some of the best monetary decisions. And so far I feel okay with it.
Right on. Okay, I changed the screen just a little bit to see how it's going to show up on YouTube. Well, interesting. So back to crypto just for a minute.
Yeah.
I consider myself new, although I've been in a while. I'm a little bit thick. I don't learn real quick, so I can see how when the numbers drop and people sell, which I don't understand. I don't understand selling the bottom. But when that happens, we call it a shakeout. We're shaking out the sellers.
Yeah.
And I can kind of see how that benefits the price.
Yeah.
Going forward, but I don't understand it fully. Can you help me with that?
Yeah. I think that's one of the funny things that people say that's supposed to be comforting. Like, oh, people are selling, but this is good for us. And it's like, maybe, I do think that like, truth is shown over time, and the price going down is sometimes a truth. Token isn't going to go all up forever, as people seem to feel in the peak of the bull run. But at the same time, it does show like the bottom of the prices essentially hit as soon as it basically shows the strong holders. What is the price when there's massive fear? Who are those people that are believing in this project enough that they'll still hold when the price dropped 90+%? And it can show how strong the community really is. Is there a strong enough narrative that people are still building in this time, and it can really ironically give some confidence. And it's that's why I think the bear markets are an asset, because it can flush things out. Those bad projects can fail, the communities can leave, they can find a better way of doing things, and you can kind of see in this period of time what's getting attention and what isn't, and what are the catastrophic failures that have happened. What can we learn from them? Those failures tend to happen in the bad times, or they're leading to the bad times, and it's part of the learning process. And I think the learning process is a massive part of the value in those. Without, I mean, you can learn a lot, and I think that's valuable. And it shows, like, you can look through to what has done well and what hasn't, and then you can take the good from those things, and it can lead to a improving, iterating in a good way. And it's kind of an anti-fragility, which is like Nassim Taleb's fancy word of like, which I think is a needed process of of hard things happening, but some things still surviving and moving forward, so that when that bad thing happens again, there's some refinement process, and it's not going to fail. Projects aren't going to fail for that same reason. And over time, through the hard times, hopefully we're moving in a better direction. And I think the hard times are a part of that process.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. John Pulse Hex posted this question several minutes ago, and let's entertain this
Let's
question.
talk about this.
Yeah, he's in the chat quite a bit.
So I have bought a little bit more ICOSA. I mean, the price is just so low relative to its history, and we are in a bear market. And I do have some concerns. Like, I'm at the beginning when I was posting all those videos, I was trying to say, I don't know how well this project's going to do. I think the intentions are good. I don't feel bad talking about the project. I don't think it's trying to rip people off. I have a relatively high confidence level in that aspect of it, but it's not obvious to me how this will play out over time. I think if it plays out well, getting in early and staking is you're likely, the probabilities are going to be that you absorb supply. Your dollar is going to go farther as a portion of supply, but we need to watch this project over time and see the reality of it. And one of the things I think it's relatively simple, but also I might not explain that well, is ICOSA specifically has some very interesting dynamics where as there's demand and the ICOSA price goes up, it indirectly incentivizes an inflation of ICOSA. And it ends up like ICOSA kind of has a theoretical limit of the top of price, but it doesn't have equal dynamics when times are hard, I'd argue. Absorbing that creation of ICOSA supply that happened in the good times. And so ICOSA is kind of always running off supply wise. For example, the last best time that ever happened, it prices made up of supply and demand. And whenever times are good, there's a lot of incentives to print more, but when times are bad, that printing of ICOSA is still there, and it in the good times carried forward through the bad times, and it can make the bad times every time worse than the time before. And at the same time, I like Alex, and I think he's another wise person. I think the way that he talks about things is pretty thought out and not extremely emotional, and pretty practical and pretty realistic. And it's going to be interesting to see, he's talking about creating some more things that may help this process. And there are other dynamics that are built into this. The way ICOSA, is disinflationary, it is harder to create it over time relative to the T-share rate and some other things. I like it. I want it to do well. I'm still holding my bags, but I'm less bullish on the project than I think I was at the beginning. I think the price, especially from where it has been and where it is now, could appreciate a lot. But it's harder for me to see this as a really long-term hold at this point in time. But I have to recognize I don't know the specifics of exactly what Alex is working on, and I want to be able to take those into account and reevaluate with the new information as it comes out.
Cool. Thanks for being frank. Appreciate that. No, that's good. We got to take the bad with the good. And yeah, I'm optimistic for ICOSA, but I don't have as much perhaps of a galaxy brain as you do.
You have done some very good work, and you've crunched a lot of numbers. So you've approached ICOSA from a little bit different focus than I did. I don't know that I would say I think there's things that you have observed about the projects that I have not. I feel fairly certain in saying that.
Okay, right on. Well, we've been going for an hour. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would love to keep talking and hearing your thoughts, and yeah, have if you'd like, I'd love to come back on and talk again.
Okay.
One thing we didn't talk about. Do you need to go?
Tell me. I don't.
Okay.
No, I'm just thinking for the sake of the audience, but
yeah, I mean, yeah, I
go,
understand you want to keep
go,
it short. An hour is
go.
so fast.
I know.
What I want to hear, do you want to talk about Pulse and PulseX and Hex at all?
Yes.
Or no? Or is that just a
I
black
do.
hole?
No, it's not a black hole. Yeah, I'm open to talk about those. I mean, I had one question about
Okay.
Pulse, but you go ahead.
Well, what's your question?
Well, the question was, are you as optimistic about Pulse now that we're 5 or 6 weeks in versus 6 months ago?
I'm more optimistic than I was when we launched. I'll tell you some thoughts. Here's some thoughts on Pulse, PulseX, and the Richard Hart ecosystem for whatever they're worth. So like I was saying earlier, some things that I care about when I'm looking at projects are community and originality. And so I'm applying that to Pulse, PulseX, and Hex right now. We have a community, but that in itself is really interesting because we had a very strong community, I'd argue, because of the incentives built into Hex, where people stake their Hex for up to 15 years. So they have an incentive to care about Hex for a very long period of time relative to a lot of other things. That's a very strong dynamic, and you can observe the type of community and the incentives by what the community is doing, which there's a lot of builders in so many different ways around Hex. But what Richard Hart did, in my opinion, is he threw in basically an existential crisis to the community by forking Hex, having that same founder also create a layer one and a decentralized exchange. The Richard Hart ecosystem is not as simple as it used to be in my mind.
True,
He
100%.
threw in some reasons to be divided as a community, and I just think it's worth recognizing. And yeah, I think it's just what is. And the community is working through, like, trying to decide what in the world are we supposed to do now. For the size of the community, if there's a certain dollar amount that community is willing to invest, it's now not just spread out over Hex, it's spread out over Pulse and PulseX, PHEX, and EHEX. And that's really interesting. I do also think, for what it's worth, Pulse, and they all of those things are different, and they have different reasons to invest in, and there's a potential different audience that might invest that may not have invested before. I would argue, probably grew our community by introducing Pulse and PulseX, and it's a different dynamic, and there are some positives associated with this as well. Another thing I think, though, worth recognizing is a lot of people think that PulseX, they think of it, I feel, in the sense that Pulse and PulseX are bear market tokens. I'd argue it's not that simple, because the money that went into Pulse and PulseX was like almost at the peak of the bull market, or and a little bit like the prices were a lot higher for the tokens that people were sacrificing. They were much more of a bull market prices built into Pulse and PulseX, even though they're literally launching in a bear. The money that went into the system was at a much more bullish time, and they're not pure bear market tokens. And like some people have pointed out, at the same time, if people were going to invest in something and hold through the bear market, Pulse and PulseX, like if you sacrificed in 2021 or whatever for Pulse, in you held your Hex, or you'd held whatever other token that you had at that time, Pulse has actually done very well. Like it there's not very many tokens you could have invested in that were equal to the same value at the bottom of the bear that they were in 2021. And so, like, yeah, I think it's worth recognizing. So I want to talk about the originality. So what's the original value that might what's some examples potentially of the original value that Richard Hart has created. So he has a layer one. What's original about it? It's a fork of Ethereum, but it has a buy and burn. That's an original aspect of it. He has a decentralized exchange. What's original about that? Well, it has a buy and burn.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also has a bridge. The bridge to me is potentially undervalued because it's a very inclusive bridge. There are not a lot of layer ones that have that inclusive of a bridge, and I think that's something that there's not a lot of other chains that are able to compete against, and that puts some value that other things don't have in the favor of Richard Hart. Another value is the fact that Richard Hart has a layer one, a decentralized exchange, a bridge, and a store of value. One developer has all of those things, and he has the potential to incentivize all of those things working together in a way that doesn't exist other places. At the same time, I think it's a potential downside. There's downsides to that as well. Richard Hart is competing with his layer one against other layer ones, where there are individuals that their whole life, like Vitalik and whoever you want to, majority of layer ones are developers that all they are doing is focusing on innovating and improving and making the best layer one they possibly can. Decentralized exchanges are commonly the same way, where they have an owner and a team that is focused all of they have into making the best layer or the best decentralized exchange possible.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Hart's competing on all of those things. That is a exceptional challenge, and the chances that he's going to be better than everyone in is he going to really have the best layer one, the best decentralized exchange? Like, it's unlikely that he'll have enough creativity and focus to just dominate on every single one of those aspects. I don't know what the value is of owning all of them and having them work together, because that's what he has, and they sacrificing the ability to focus on any one of those things for the ability to have all of those things work together. And it's an interesting just observation from my point. And we'll see. It's the bear markets, and like we'll see how this works when things turn around. Like, buying into Pulse and PulseX now is better than the history of buying in. So that's an observation.
Right. That might explain, the complexity of the system that we now have, which I counted. Correct me if I'm wrong. We got hex, and then p hex, and then e hex, pulse x, pulse. So we have
Yep.
4 tokens. So we went from like a laser focus, one token, which
Yes.
is just hex, and now suddenly we have
Yep.
4. So whenever you split your attention, the
Yes.
effectiveness in each one of those is going to decrease kind of naturally.
Correct.
And
Yep.
so, and he does have his hands full trying to, make all of these the best of the best, which might
Yeah.
explain why we
It's
perhaps
expensive.
haven't heard from, and it's expensive. Yeah. But he hasn't live streamed in a while. I think probably because he's either taking a break
Yeah.
from all the work, or
Yeah.
he's moving forward.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot of theories on why he's not streaming, and it could be related to he's trying to appease the SEC and make sure that he doesn't hurt himself by saying something wrong.
sure.
Which is a really hard thing. I've watched other chains start really caring about what the SEC thinks, and indirectly they were very, very hurt because they weren't communicating. And I don't fortunate Richard Hart's unique in that he already has such a strong community that the community is filling in a lot of gaps. They're building, they're doing things, they're telling you what they're doing, so you have something to hope for a better future in. There's a lot of cool projects that are going to be launched on Pulse that don't exist yet. There's still reason to see a better tomorrow in this system, I think, and that's really good. Yeah, we'll see over time though how this whole thing works out.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of people that, once we do end up coming out of this bear market, they're going to discover they got free tokens over on the Pulse network. and hopefully they have value. I haven't even looked at some of it. I haven't
Yeah,
even looked
that
up.
narrative is going to be really interesting to see. Are the forked tokens really going to bring that much attention and value? I don't feel like it's done a lot yet.
Yeah,
We'll see.
people are asleep right now,
Yeah.
so they'll wake up eventually, and hopefully it's not 3 years from now.
Yeah.
But it's not up to us. Well, actually, it is up to us. I mean, it's up to us to buy
We
the token
control
so the number goes up.
we control our actions. We can control
Yep.
that. We can't control what any particular whale is going to do. We can't control what Richard Hart is going to say or do tomorrow.
Agreed. Do you want to answer? Can you see the questions and the
Yeah.
comments in the chat? Okay. Red Squirrel's been a friend. Can you answer this for him?
Thoughts on buying up land rather than property? I mean, I think things like real estate is maybe not so different from a lot of things in that there are so many ways to play the game and there are so many opportunities out there. Like resourcefulness and creativity, like you can buy it. So the hard part with land, I'll just talk off my head as best I can.
Sure.
Buying up land, land is one of those limited resources. There's only so much land. There's 21 million potential Bitcoin, but there's only so much land in this world. And so in that aspect, there's maybe a supply and demand is, related potentially to the population and where the land's at and what demand that you see in the future for it. But land tends to have higher lending requirements. You tend to have a higher interest rate when you buy land. And if the land isn't like farmland, if the land itself isn't automatically bringing in income, if buying the land and developing it in some way is not a part of your short-term future, it can be a hard play. So just buying land and sitting on it, your opportunity cost can be pretty high. The cool thing about property or developing it, you have a relatively confident return on investment. Like if I built an apartment complex or I buy an apartment complex, you can think in 20-year terms. Like, is this location gonna have demand for the next 20 years? You don't have to speculate a lot of times to answer that question. What are rents going for in this area? And you can also look at it like if this is a somewhat depressed property for one reason or another, it's not that hard in my opinion, to calculate in what are the improvements going to do, what are the other properties in the area renting for with this improvements, what kind of input cost versus output over time kind of equation can I get. There's some confidence in playing those out. So buying up land, I don't know, it depends on the kind of land. Like speaking for my area, which is farm, there's a lot of farmland. My family owns farmland. The land has gone up a lot. It's kind of like the housing market. It's really gone up. And like, I don't, it's not obvious to me that buying land right now is a really good play, but it depends. Like where is that land? What are you going to do with it? There's a lot of creative things you can do, but just buying land and letting it sit because you think the number is going to go up, that would be probably, as real estate type stuff goes, more speculative. And
It'd be like buying Bitcoin.
Yeah, it would be
sense.
a play that I'd rather probably just play crypto if I was going to go about it for that reason.
Sure.
Myself, but I don't know if that red squirrel is, if I'm speaking to what you're thinking.
I have some thoughts on that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I like in crypto, I like things that provide cash flow,
Yes.
yield,
Yeah.
if you will. And if I was going to buy land versus an apartment building, I would want to perhaps develop it to where it's still like essentially land, but you could build like a what do you call it, RV park. Somebody built one here just over the
Yeah.
last couple of years. I don't know what the lots go for, but I'm like, wow, that was probably
R-
a pretty wise
RV
investment.
parks are historically a very good return on investment. I think the demand for RV parks is up. But the one of the interesting things about RV parks is that there's a lot of times restrictions. Like the city only wants so much, and it ends up giving a monopoly to the people that are able to have one. A lot of times
Mm,
it incentivizes a higher demand, because even though the market may be saying we need more, the cities are like, we don't like these RV parks everywhere in our town. We're very selective about where they go in and how many we're going to have. And so when you are able to do it, um, you can get a good return on investment. And then another thing is, like, mobile home parks and RV parks, maybe RV parks are a little bit better, but a lot of people that have money that they want to invest, for some reason, there's certain types of businesses in real estate that is not as flashy. And for some reason, even though the return's really good, they just don't want to buy it. And so from a money standpoint, I think historically, you can get a pretty good return on investment on some of those things. But anyway.
like what sort of things? What type of assets?
Well, I just like, it wasn't that long ago that I think the average cap rate on mobile home parks was like 10%. Like that's like pretty great. And um
I wouldn't care to have a mobile home park with much less of a
exactly.
cap rate, honestly.
Right, there you go.
It's
And neither would
okay.
other people.
I just illustrated what you were just talking about. Then I don't care
Yes,
to own one.
exactly. Another
Right.
business that tends to have a good return on investment is porta potty.
Mm-hmm.
People that have a lot of money and their wives are like, "Oh, we don't want to own a porta potty business," but they tend to have a pretty good return on investment. And I've seen some personal friends own and sell them, and there were amazing opportunities for certain people, because like there weren't a ton of buyers, even though the return was really good. So they ended up selling it owner finance. Like, that is something, like, if you're a hardworking person and, you have half a brain on your head, you could get into so much money. There's a beautiful opportunity there, and some of those, like, not as flattery sounding or looking of business opportunities.
Right. And so I'm kind of like Stephanie. We'd love to get into apartments. That's kind of our
Yeah,
thing.
those are
But
the ultimate in my mind,
the ultimate.
but they
But
have lower cap rates. I mean,
yes, you got to be really very selective in picking those. What I'm looking for, and I don't know if this is the right term, but I'm looking for the unicorn. I'm like,
yeah,
what is the asset class that nobody's talking about
right.
that cash flows and it's pretty much turnkey.
Yeah,
You don't have to manage it. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
the most turnkey that you can get with great cash flow. And I haven't found it yet, but I haven't really gone looking yet much either. But that would be like the ultimate, whatever
yeah.
that is, whether it's like self storage or steel
Yes,
buildings or
self-storage is another one, that can do really well. That's
Mhm.
some of my family makes quite a bit of money
Yeah,
from.
but it's like once you hear about it, everybody's doing it. So
Yes.
everybody's doing self storage.
Yep,
So
yep. For what it's worth, for me, because I have a background working with a lot of contractors in that process, I feel like I have an edge in. Um, Apartment complexes that are depressed is appealing to me. Um
like in class C neighborhoods and that sort of.
Well, that the ideal would be a relatively good location, but like, there was one property I was looking at recently, apartment complex, that the stoves are green, shag carpet.
1970s.
That's what I want, but the
All right.
structure is solid.
Yeah,
Like
good bones.
like shag carpets, replacing flooring is not intimidating to me. Replacing appliances is not intimidating. Like, that I have a relatively high confidence level on. It was going for a cap rate of, I think, 8.8. And so you would want to negotiate, actually calculate numbers, verify that this is a good, but that's like,
Sure.
I could own an apartment complex with a relatively good return on investment, I think, for putting in a little bit of work. It would not be turnkey, but that's the reason for, like, it's rented, like, but anyway, but I don't know, that particular asset class, I guess, is appealing to me, but that some of it's based on my background.
Yep. Agreed. All right. So why are we talking about real estate, guys? Because I mean, if we end up going into a, as our portfolios grow, we should be looking for a place to, store this. In my opinion, none of this is financial advice, but where are we going to store our wealth? Are we going to leave it in crypto, or should we put it in another asset class? And I'm thinking real estate, because you can cash flow it. Real
Yeah.
estate for myself, you can cash flow it, and it's less volatile. So that's why we're talking about real estate a bit. And I think with that, we're going to
Alrighty.
end the show. It's been almost an hour and a half. And now about 8-10 months ago, you posted on Twitter about something about asking for subs. You're like, do you think I should be asking for subscribers for my YouTube
Oh
channel?
yeah.
And I was like, because I love to walk onto a car lot and not be bothered, right?
Yeah.
That's just me. And I was like, I didn't have a channel back then. I said, it'd be really cool if you could build a channel without asking for subs. Well,
I don't
guess
think I've
what?
ever asked.
Oh, you
Are
haven't?
you gonna say
I'm
have
going
you?
to ask for you. And guess what I do now? I
Right.
ask for subs. I always forget. But so if you like this video, if you like this kind of content, like it. I mean, because it helps the algorithm. Subscribe if you want to hear more of this. You go over to Maxim Broadcast. Is that how it's Maxim
that's my
space
YouTube
Broadcast on YouTube, and subscribe to his channel as well. So, is there anything else before we cut it off?
Oh, we could keep going, but maybe it's too long. So
we'll have you on again.
That's all I
That's
have.
a better plan.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We'll talk soon. Bye.